Hey there. Here we are with Lùb Ionnsachaidh, who's been brought back to the builder's yard because having launched the new boat, we've discovered the superior performance of the new boat. And frankly, it's underlined a few things that I think I was privately aware of in the, it's called the, I'm going to call them the defects that have appeared in this hull over its 9-year life, thousands of nautical miles, thousands of kilometers. But here we are, and essentially this is the breaker's yard, because I'm going to sum up the last bit of lessons learned from this boat, because from here we're going to disassemble her and recycle just about as much as possible. I mean, typically one of these boats will theoretically last forever, because when a piece wears out, you can replace it. It's a modular construction. But the principal fault of this boat is the size of the gunnels. I built these, as I've related in an earlier video, and I guess I should recap it here. I was building this boat with the material at hand. So the gunnels were originally 1 inch by 2 inches. Typically, in the classic build, shall we say, reading from extant Carey Cricks, and also in works like James Hornell's Coracles and Cricks of Ireland, the dimension is over like 1 1/8, 1 1/4 by 3, or up to 3 1/4. I was building by 1 by 2 because that's the material I had. And at one point I contacted my mentor in Ireland, Paddy de Hora of Donkin, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, Bellaferter anyway. And I says, I'm building this, but am I wasting wood? Am I wasting time because of the dimensions I'm using? And I said, what dimensions do you use? And he says, whatever I can find, man, because where he lives, nothing really grows higher than your knee. So when he's building a new kirk, oftentimes he is literally beachcombing. So I proceeded with it, and we had many happy adventures in her. We took her out in some seriously big waves, you know, wind warnings, not quite gale, but some pretty rough water. But we noticed after a couple of seasons that as we were rowing, the hull was working a little bit. She was flexing, and it sort of came to it. So that flexing troubled me. So I did a modification, because back up as a sidebar, we'd originally skinned this with canvas painted with tar. That lasted a couple of seasons. Replaced it with a second canvas coating. That lasted a couple of seasons. And then finally with the ballistic nylon that you see today. It had a problem, which I'll bring up a little bit later, but with the skin off, I added, I scarfed on some pieces to restore or to bring the gunnels to their proper dimension, which is 1 by 3. That eliminated the visible flexing. But a few weeks ago, we were out in the new boat. We rowed across English Bay at its widest point, which usually in this boat would take us 2.5 to 3 hours. The new boat did it in an hour, and we were only just at a relaxing 1 stroke per minute pace, which tells me that even though the flexing isn't visible, when we're coordinated with our rowing stroke, the frame is working enough to deprive us of that efficiency, because that effort is going somewhere and it's not going into the speed of the boat. So hence my decision to bring her home. Well, also because I can't afford 2 storage places at the Jericho. So yeah, so here we are. I'd also, part of this reason for this video is a very respected boat builder, Mark Rutan, had asked about some more details of the difference between the 2 hulls. So I'll come on forward and I'll show you. We'll start with the bow. And looking into the boat, we see my stem. And I described this in the video in which I introduced this boat the day we launched it. Typically, a Carey Crick would only have a spacer between the upper and lower gunnel up here in the bow. That's known as the Carey bow. The rest of the shape was achieved with the stringers, primarily with the wide keel stringer. I had lagged a perfect branch from a cedar tree in the neighborhood, and It sat in my shop for a few seasons, and I was like, you're the perfect shape for a boat. So as I was building this, and I pulled this piece out and said, I can't bear to shorten you because it's exactly the curve I wanted. Now, in this, I was also influenced by another mentor of mine, Clive Westman, when I worked at Britannia Shipyard down in Steveston. And he was an old waterman. He could look at a traditionally built wooden fish boat built any time in the last 100 years, and he could tell you where on the coast it was designed, because local sea conditions produce the local hull shape, the optimum hull shape. So rather than a traditional carry bow, this hull shape, this bow shape, is more redolent of a Fraser River gill netter, particularly the ones that weren't fishing right in the mouth of the river, but that were going out a few kilometers into the chuck. So it's a broader bow with a concave cross section, and I did that by bending the ribs so that they met the stem on the inside surface. And that produced, if you can look down, you can see that produced quite a convex bow. And it was great, because we would meet some very big waves in this thing. And you know, she just rode like a bird on the water. But when she did hit a wave with this bow, she would spank, she would slap, and that was a bit annoying. So the other factor that we can see is that heavy use, that the ribs, it may not be visible in this light, but the ribs have broken at the, well, that one hasn't, that one's still in its shape, but the rest of these have broken and shifted. So, and that's not something I want to perpetuate. So yeah, so a note about the skin. Now, it's stretched tightly now because it's in sunlight, but when I first started using ballistic nylon over 30 years ago, it was constructed so that you could, or it was made so that you could drape it over your boat. You got it relatively smooth, relatively tight, and then you would fasten it, and then you would wet it, and that would cause the skin to shrink as tight as a drum. And that was the procedure I remembered when I reskinned this boat in the ballistic nylon, only to find that something had changed, because the proper way with the modern skin available is to tailor it and then soak it and stretch it as tight as you can and then fasten it, and then it shrinks. So in consequence, this skin, when it gets wet, it gets baggy and it looks like a gyoza wrapper. It's the ugliness I can deal with, but the fact that the skin properly has an important structural purpose, that it's keeping the frame under tension as it's shrunk tight. So by having a sloppy skin, the balance between tension and compression is altered, is changed, and not in a good way. And I think that was contributing not only to the slowness of the boat, as we discovered when we launched the new one, which goes like flappers, but also how it was working. And I think if I let this continue, it could possibly result in a catastrophic failure, a break. So again, lesson learned, we're going to decommission her, but we're also going to resurrect her again. So what I'm going to get out of it, well, I can't use the gunnels, I can use the shoulders. All four thwarts will be used again, and it's makes me smile a little bit to see the polish on these thwarts from our backsides as we rode this thing again so many hundreds of nautical miles. Yeah, so the gunnels I cannot use again, but the thwarts, the knees, the foot braces, that's keelson, that inside keelson that you see there, which we laminated up out of red cedar. Properly, I wouldn't have a use for it in the new boat, but there's something about it that calls to me. I like that additional feature, along with the supporting posts under the thwarts, which normally we don't see in a carry currach, but we see in racing kayaks. But I found it necessary because at Jericho, instead of carrying the boat on our shoulders, we loaded on a dolly. And the weight of the boat concentrated on one small section of the frame where it rests on the dolly was caused it to hog, because this has lost most of its shear, caused it to hog. So by adding my keelson and adding these posts, it communicated more of the compression to the gunnels and the thwarts, which is the main structural element of the kirk. So yeah, thwarts will be reused, footrests, the shoulders, the thole pins, as the thole pads will be reused. And it's interesting, as I was fiddling with this, the thimbles, which the bottom of the thole pin rests in, are sitting directly on the gunnels. And when I put my finger in there, because we're using gas pipe, short lengths of gas pipe for the thole pins rather than wood, the gas pipe has been just moving back and forth and slowly drilling into the thwart. So I put my finger in each of these. I probably wouldn't be able to get it on the camera, but if I put my finger in each of these, we have a center nub sticking up that feels almost a centimeter tall. So that tells me that, again, that it's slowly weakening the hull as it drills through. But it's also warning me that in the current boat and in future boats, I'm going to drop a loonie or a toonie or a disc of leather down there to act as a buffer, so that in future boats will not be gradually worn out by the action of the thole pins. That's about it, really. From here we're gonna start disassembling her. The ribs and the stringers I really don't think I can reuse. I'll probably just cut them up into short sections and then gradually feed them to my barbecue when the barbecue is lit, so that I can recover the copper, as we'll do something with the copper. This was down here at the back, sorry. This way that I'd constructed the transom, the upper and lower transom, is in no way traditional. As you can see, I've got knees, laminated knees, crosswise and lengthwise. And originally they're cut half lap and then glued and then later riveted together. And I did that because I had recently discovered the joy of being able to actually accurately fit compound bevels in wood. And no great shakes as a woodworker, but I discovered I could do that, and I just sort of dove into it with joy. So I think I might well see if I can recycle this whole feature, because it's done us very well. I want to see if also, looking at that embroidery I put across the back of the, don't know what to call them, the twine dragons, I suppose. I want to see if I can recover and recycle that as well, because one of the original names I was thinking about for this boat was Nathan Mor, which means the long serpent, or the great serpent, and that influenced that embroidery I did in the back. So see if I can find a way to reclaim and reuse that. So yeah, she's done us proud. We've welded together a team, and we row very well together. We've had a number of wonderful times with her, but from here we will resurrect her and rebuild her into a new and better boat, employing the lessons learned on her, but also the lessons that we're learning on the new boat. So there it is. It's a gorgeous afternoon. Somebody in the neighborhood's got a barbecue going, and I think it's maybe beer o'clock. So talk to you later.